Good morning. Thank God it's right. I hope that you all have good plans for the weekend. I feel like you really persevered this week, and I appreciate so much how I felt standing here. I can see the attentiveness. I can see that people, and I want to tell you, when you stand and do presentations like this, it is not a one-way streak. It's a two-way streak, meaning for me to keep coming day in and day out and feel like, yeah, I want to be here and stand and talk to those guys and do my best. It wouldn't happen if it wasn't for the positive energy that I have felt from all of you all week. And for that, I am very grateful to all of you. It's been really great, and I just hope that you will really enjoy the entire foundation course, and it will set a good start for all of you for the rest of the year. So thank you so much. I am entering the weekend feeling very good already, if I just survive today as well. So I have a couple of things to address before we get into the topic of theories today. Number one is, you know, you're all going to do your theory presentations today, and this is just an exercise in your seminar. It is not graded. What you will be graded on, among other things, is a presentation next Friday. And next Friday will be all seminars. There will be no presentation like this in the morning. You have the whole day to do your 5 presentations, and it will be on a conflict of the choice of the small group of 5 or 4. And you will choose a conflict, and then you will do an analysis, either using CR-CPAPI or anything similar, or anything that you are familiar with, that you know can do a good anatomy of a conflict to analyze it and understand the situation. And you have in the page before last in your syllabus has good explanation of what is expected of you for that presentation. And this presentation, I think it has 20% of the grade, if I'm not mistaken. So your seminar leaders today will divide you into your groups of 5, or the 5 groups, and then it is your choice what conflict you want to work on. I think we need more in the back here, if you don't mind, Irma. Thank you. Okay, good. So good luck with this activity. It will, like you've done with the theory one, you will meet together in the morning, in the afternoon, and work together as a group to prepare and design. And of course, we expect from you, as we expect today, that you will do your presentations in an interactive manner, in a manner that includes everybody, participatory. We want to see how everyone is contributing to the presentation. And also open the good space for discussion, because it is a big part of what you do. It's not only about you are telling people here is the story, but it's also how you respond to the questions and how you clarify points as needed. So good luck with this activity, and of course through your work, myself, the colleagues are available, and we can answer any questions. Any comments, any clarifications, more clarification needed on the assignment for next Friday? Okay, good. The next item I want to talk about now relates a little bit to what we'll be talking about the theories that we use in the field of peace and conflict. And I know that conceptually we may say, so what is the difference between what we did in the last 4 days, talking about conflict analysis and mapping and so on, versus those kind of theories? Well, the difference is that you can think, maybe if we think in terms of like medicine, what we did in the last 4 days was more anatomy. We are trying to understand the different pieces that come into a conflict. We want to understand sources, causes, parties, behavior, and as we are doing this, we are learning that there are certain frameworks to explain why people behave the way they behave, why people get in a conflict the way they get in a conflict. But we didn't go deeper into those theoretical frameworks that can tell us, here is a good explanation that we can use to understand the tendency of people to fight when they feel threatened in their identity, when they feel threatened because they are hungry, and why they will behave in that way versus another way. This requires a theoretical framework to give us good understanding of so why they behaved in this way, and to be able to predict in similar situations, is this how people probably will behave or not? That's what a theory is intended to do, to explain and to predict how certain things will happen. Of course, in social science, we always struggled through history to match up with the natural science, and we can never come up to the level of natural science with its accuracy and its ability to be confident that the sun will come up every day and on that time. I mean, they can calculate this for the next million years. But we cannot have that level of accuracy or precision when it comes to social phenomena. However, a lot of advances have been made. The one thing I can say about theoretical frameworks that we'll discuss today, as we said from day one, is that not one theory can explain it all. Yes, you can have this passion, or you have a soft spot for sociology or psychology or cultural studies or feminism or Marxism, but it doesn't mean that you can explain everything with one theory. And I think many people have made big mistake, whether practitioners or politicians or scholars, are the ones who become so rigid about trying to understand everything from one theory. Those who are old like me remember the days when communism was out there, and I still remember that as much as I had a soft spot for Marxism, and I continue to, but I was always mad at my Marxist friends because I found them to be the most stubborn and arrogant. They think we figured it all out. We know the story of the universe, and this is how it works. And again, I appreciate so much of what I can learn from Marxism, but I really think that there's so much you can learn from other things. And in the field of peace and conflict, there is, and as you're going to see as we talk about those different theories, you will appreciate that, yes, this theory can probably explain to me a one dimension, but another dimension is missing. I appreciate in the work that you read today, in the required reading by Huang, after he spoke about psychoanalytical theory, you see in his last paragraph, he said, well, good stuff, but I think that wasn't good enough to explain everything. It was more rational theories that can add to this understanding. So there is nothing wrong as a good scholar, as a master's graduate, to have this ability to say, yes, I appreciate what I can get from one theory or the other, but it is not to say that this is the dominant one or the only one. So I always want you to have this open attitude about accepting different theories, new theories that can explain things, and nothing wrong to say, oh, I was so stuck on this approach to things, but now I can see, in retrospect, I can see that maybe it's not. There is nothing wrong with that. This is actually an evolved scholar, somebody who can accept that, and I can say that actually one of the people I fully respect, and I think I mentioned him before, Chris Moore, who wrote a book on mediation. And when I first studied about mediation at George Mason, his first book was just talking about, this is mediation. This is the book of mediation, like the Bible, that everyone should learn to do it like this way. And I think the discussion yesterday brought up some of that when we reflected on the behavior of the facilitator in the video. But then later, he himself comes in his book and say, you know, I was wrong. I think everything I assumed was universal was not. It was Western. And there are many other ways that people are doing. And in his own new edition of his book, he made sure to add a section at the end of every chapter, and I think he called it culture variations or culture adaptations. The book is called The Process of Mediation, or The Mediation Process, one of the two. And in the end of every chapter, he explains how things may be different culturally from one place to the other. Nothing wrong with recognizing the limitations of some theories that we've been working with and to be open to expand it. With that, I would like to go through some of those theories. And of course, I am not going to go in depth with either one of them. Actually, you're doing this great work today after this session. But I would like just to show how they relate to what we do, give you some of the important elements in some of those theories, and how they can complement each other. That's what I'll try to do in this session. As you can see, I made an effort to break down those theories in terms of micro, mid-range, or meso, and macro-level theories. Based on what? Based on what I can call the unit of analysis. Meaning, what is the theory focusing on in its analysis? Is it analyzing the individual, or is it trying to analyze the large movement of societies and the groups? To the extent that the theory is focusing the unit of analysis on the individual, we call this micro theory. to the extent that the unit of analysis is the group or the society or the community, then we call this macro theory. In addition, there is another level of how we break this down. I would say that the mid-range theory is interested not necessarily about it's actually a nice mix between the individual and the large and the group. However, it is not trying to explain everything. The mid-range theory is trying to take a certain phenomena and try to explain it and understand it. For example, the relative deprivation, especially an anomie. Those are two theories that try to understand why people at certain times in societies will get mad with the system around them and will try to do something to change it. Now, that is not explaining the whole universe like Marxism attempts, but no, it's trying to say that the phenomena of rebellion, the phenomena of people revolting, we want to understand it. So this is, we call it mid-range theory in sociology, meaning it is taking a specific element and trying to understand it, does not claim that it has an understanding of the whole movement of humanity, like the macro-level theories try to do. Another dimension I want to say, and that's a good discussion I have with my colleagues, and I'm sure some of you wonder, why do I have feminist and environmental as perspectives, not having them under one of the three levels? My own perspective on that, and the reason I kept them separate, is that I believe that especially feminism runs through all of these. And we don't want to lose sight of this. We need to be able to appreciate, even when I use any kind of theory, whether biological or frustration, aggression, or relative deprivation, or basic human needs, on all those levels, I want to make sure that I don't lose sight of feminism as I'm doing this. And that's why I thought that, no, maybe it's better to address it. And you know that even at UPeace here, when you think, you're going to see in your classes, feminism and the feminist theory and gender issues are mainstream to a great extent in everything we do, including in the way we teach and the way we develop our academic work. Environmental perspectives, I also felt that probably they do have an effect like this that we need to be aware of. It's more macro level, yes, but we should not lose sight of it as we move forward. And also because it was a new idea when we developed those concepts a few years ago, it's still taken, as you know, it's still even debatable. I mean, when we talk about climate change, you have people who say, oh, it doesn't exist. So I think environmental perspectives are still struggling to find their place as a theory like the others here. But this is not set in stone, the way I framed it. If other people have different ways of framing it, fine. But I hope that you will appreciate that, yes, I cannot take feminism out of this equation here. No way. Neither environmental considerations. How to fit it, that's definitely up to different perspectives of different people. So according to this, if we start with the micro-level theory, the focus is at the individual level. And if you take C.R.C. Papio on how people behave and the attitude that they have and behavior versus each other. And the first one I put here is the biological theories. And the reason we put biological theories is, yes, biology as a science is not what we are concerned with. But I'm sure in your readings that you have seen the psychological theories, all of them quickly seem to find their root in some biological studies of animals and other species that were intended to help us understand who we are as human beings. Why is that? Because many of the theories in psychology had the assumption that we are driven by our primal needs. We want to secure ourselves from fear. We want to secure ourselves from secure our basic needs of food and so on. And to do that, those are primal. We are similar to our ancestors, if you believe in evolution. Or you embrace this. And if we look at how apes or other animals who are similar to us behave in order to satisfy those needs or to satisfy the security needs, then perhaps that will give us good insight in how we as human beings are behaving. Of course, psychologists are not saying that we are they are not as deterministic to say that, oh, we're just animals, and just if we see that the apes are doing this way, then we're going to behave this way. Of course, they are very aware that there is a secondary dimension of response when we feel that we're afraid or something triggers our fear, and we need to do a response to satisfy whatever need is, and that comes from our social interaction. And that's where psychology and sociology start to become what we call social psychology. In other words, it is very clear, yes, we can understand something about human nature by looking at the biological dimensions of animals and so on, and what happens. And of course, there are good studies that talk about what happens in your brain when you feel afraid. And now there is enough technology to see that, oh my goodness, look at all that happening, the changes happening to your brain, or how it happens to your stomach, how the things that change biologically in you when you feel afraid or you feel threatened. And those are biological symptoms of responses that you have, that the body is trying to protect itself. This is where we share something with animals. And understanding those changes that happen biologically when you are in a time of conflict. Yesterday we said, what do you feel in times of conflict? Anger, frustration, fear, and so on. And they do have a biological effect on us. They are not just in our mind. And that effect is something that we have to understand, because likely our behavior will include an element of trying to satisfy that uncomfortable feeling in my stomach or in my head or wherever. So there is a response that's trying to satisfy that biological discomfort, but also we know that we have been socialized in certain ways to know how to deal with this. So psychology field that tries to understand how we behave in conflict situations is a combination of understanding how we deal with the biological changes that happen inside us, and also the social learning that come with it. Yes, Marie?
I feel like I have a really good example. So I know how to live in Seattle, Washington, but Costa Rica is a whole new thing. And earlier this week, some of you might have noticed I was very tense and uncomfortable. Someone had posted on Facebook pictures of a tarantula that they saw in their house, and I didn't sleep for like 3 nights. And then I found another big spider in my house that then hatched babies. And I have been terrified all week, I'm not going to lie, and I am not used to this. So everything I did until yesterday or Wednesday night, when my landlord's daughter came and caught them all for me because I was terrified, was influenced by that. I was anxious about going home from school. I was half of my mind for classes was somewhere else, and I also had all these other things going on. But the very base, like thinking about going home, the hair on the back of my neck would stand up, like very visceral, physical fear responses were there, and then I looked up some tools, and I'm finding ways to cope with this. But it took me, like, it's going to take me time to get used to that.
Excellent. Thank you. Yes, definitely. We all do have those kind of feelings that we get biologically, combined with how we respond to it, that we have to match it with how we have been trained and how we learn it socially to respond to things. And this is where I think that you can see a good link between all those four. That on one level, I mean, earlier theories seem to focus more on that dynamic of frustration, aggression, and that there is a threat to you, there is a drive to do something, there is a cue that I need to respond, and the response is bringing some reward or achieving that satisfaction. And this kind of primal concept has been developed more, as you've seen, I'm sure, and I hope some of you will do the presentation today on the theories by Banadora about social psychology, right? And I love this one, because I remember when I was reading that stuff in my PhD, when you read about frustration, aggression, and you read about the earlier work, you feel like, oh my God, the picture is so grim and terrible. I mean, people will just act like animals and respond in violence to whenever they feel uncomfortable. But it was actually, as you move in the reading into what Dollard and Banadora have introduced, and Miller, you realize, oh no, there is hope, because we as humans have the capacity to learn. And of course, I mean, everything we're doing here and learning about peace and undoing all the things that we used to do and try to find new ways to behave in conflict in a peaceful manner is based on what? On social learning theory. On the assumption that humans can learn to do new things and different things and evolve beyond the simple, I'm going to respond in a certain way in a certain situation. For that, now I'm going to share with you a true story. And I think we'll bring to life, to a great extent, some of those concepts, and maybe we'll connect it, which I'll bring it later, to the basic human needs. I was in Rwanda in 2001. I went to do research or evaluation of programs on peace building that were conducted by an organization, many people know it, called Oxfam. You know Oxfam? Oxfam is an organization that does work on humanitarian issues, development issues worldwide. And so Rwanda, of course, after the genocide in 1994, and other organizations were working hard to try to help with the communities there. So Oxfam did a program in Rwanda where they wanted to help Hutus and Tutsis who lived in different rural communities especially to learn to work together. Those guys, as you can imagine, they have gone through terrible time. Million people, 800,000 people died in 3-4 months. Communities have been broken. Families have been divided. Even, I mean, a child. I mean, imagine like a brother and sister or a husband and wife will kill themselves because one has more Hutu or Tutsi blood than the other. So imagine now they go back to their communities. The hatred is there. They don't know how to work together. They don't even know how to speak to each other. Yet they need to live, and they need to start to farm their land again and to cultivate and to produce. So Oxfam came and wanted to encourage them to learn again how to work together. So in order to do this, Oxfam offered a program. Of course, those guys at that time are desperate. There's no money, nothing, poor, very poor. So they offered them that if each group of 4 or 5 families who have land close to each other will come together and make a proposal for some financial support to do something to cultivate together and produce crops, then we will help you with money. The catch is all of you who are part of this group working together or entrepreneurship will come to training on conflict resolution. So the idea was to combine economic development with ethnic bonding, along with learning conflict resolution skills, so that you know how to deal with any problems that may happen as you do your work together. And also, God forbids, if things erupt again in your community and people again are killing each other because they are Hutu or Tutsi, you have new skills to know how to deal with this in the future. People agreed, and of course, out of being desperate, finally somebody giving you some money to do something, so people started to apply actually and get money to do this. I will just go into one line. It's not the final story I want, but I just want to show you something important, which is when we went to do the evaluation, we met with people, and Hutus, Tutsis, villagers working together. And we'd ask them, so you got the money from Oxfam? Yes. And what was the project that you were looking for? Or what did you get the money for? And they would say, oh, we wanted a goat. Goat, the animal. Okay, next one. What was that you got from Oxfam? Goat. Goat. I mean, it's like we go everywhere, goat, goat, goat. And so we tried to figure out why was goat important for them? Anyone can guess? You cannot guess? Huh? Milk. Good guess, but wrong. Okay, let's try again. Who else? Guess. I'm not going to judge you. Huh? Status symbol, wrong. Huh? To sell it, wrong.
Your neighbor's yard.
Meat, wrong. Neighbor's yard. What do you mean neighbor's yard?
To put your goat out on your neighbor's yard.
To bother them.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that passive aggressive guy. No. As what? As a celebration. Wronger. Okay. Wow, brilliant. Wrong. Okay, one final time. All those master's degree guys are unable to figure out the goat. As a dowry. Wrong. Huh? To feed? Say again. To eat the field. You're getting there. Huh? To eat the field and then what? Huh? Fertilizer. We're getting there. Yes, the fertilizer. The goat, when you leave it in the grass, what will it do? It will eat some of the grass. And then, biologically, what will happen to the grass that they ate? They will poop it. Yeah, and that's what happens. And the poop is excellent fertilizer for the land that will maximize the crops and the productivity of the land. And they don't want a big animal, a cow, because the cow will eat everything. But the goat, the ratio between the input and the output is perfect for the fertilization of the land. Now, all of us PhDs going there with the big SUV like all those organizations do, we did not know why is this, but it is the villagers who understood this, of course, and the farmers, because this is their life. However, again, that's not the story I want to get. I want to get to a third ethnic group in Rwanda that is called the Batwa, or Twa, T-W-A, or B-A-T-W-A. The Batwa are a small percentage of the population, about 3 to 5% at that time, if that many. They are seen like, if you take the Indian caste system, what is the one in the bottom? The untouchable, right? Yeah, and you refer to them as the untouchable. What does it mean, untouchable? Why are they not touchable? Because what?
They do the menial jobs for the society.
Yeah, and so,
Washing toilets, it doesn't exist anymore.
right. But in the traditional sense of things, that they are untouchable, meaning you don't want to touch them because they are yuck, they are dirty, they are not clean. And then in other cultures, you will see that actually they add stereotypes. That those are people that are not, number one, dirty, not honest, stupid. They are just going to cause problems, not honest. I mean, you start to throw on them every negative stereotype you can imagine, and that's why you stay away from them. You don't go near them. And the more they feel like this, of course, in a society, and they find that everybody is ostracizing them, nobody want to work with them, nobody want to go near them, nobody want to share anything with them. So they do what? They find themselves lost, and then they behave in a way that reinforces the stereotype. So unfortunately, that Batwa group has lived like this for quite some time. Unlike the project I mentioned where Hutu Tutsis coming together to work on the land, it was no problem, even though they hate each other every now and then, but they can still see each other as peer, as a human I can work with. And that's why they could do that joint project with Oxfam. But the Batwas, nobody want to work with them. They don't own land, nothing. They are just walking around, roaming around, maybe trying to beg for money or make some clay pot and try to sell it if they can, if they're lucky. Otherwise, they are desperate. And even though there was a lot of poverty in Rwanda at that time, those guys are in the bottom of poverty that is below even everybody else. So Oxfam wanted to help them. So they said, how can we help you? So they told them that, listen, that model you have of working together across ethnic lines is not going to work for us because nobody want to work with us. So if you want to help us, you're going to have to help us by ourselves. So Oxfam said, we'll develop a model for that. Okay, we'll work just for you. So what do we do to help you? You don't have a land, so we cannot use a goat. So what do we do to help you? They said, well, you know, we have no land, nothing. The only thing we can do probably is to try to develop our ability to sell stuff in the market. And so maybe if you give us some money, we can buy some fruits and some vegetables and go to the market, sit like all the other people and try to sell things. And the more we do this, we improve our situation economically. At the same time, we gain respect in the community that we are doing something productive. And the cycle will start to run. So Oxfam said, fine, sounds good. So they give them the money. They went and bought the fruits and vegetables. And on the way going to the market, they ate the fruits and vegetables. Yeah, they ate the fruits and vegetables. So when I learned this, I thought, I really want to see those people. I want to understand what were they thinking. So I went to see them. And I have to say that I was a little bit kind of intrigued in almost a sarcastic way by what they did. And I just wanted to figure out what was this. So I went and we sat together under a tree with about 5, 6 of them, women and men. Among them, this very old man, maybe about 80 years old or so. And of course, when you see their condition, I cannot even start to describe how they looked in terms of the level of poverty and desperation that they are in. So I started to talk to them. So, you are Batwa? Yeah, Batwa. And then, yeah, nobody want to talk to us. Nobody likes us and all that story. And then, so you got the Oxfam gave you money? Yes, they gave us money. And you went and bought the fruits and vegetables? Yes, we did. And you were going to the market? Yes. And on the way you ate it? Yes. I said, yes. What were you thinking? And I think I kind of like a couple of you have kind of murky smile on your face as I'm saying this. I think I had that murky smile on my face when I was asking that. And this old man in that group looked me right in my eyes when I said, what were you thinking? And he just said 2 words. He said, hunger bites. Hunger bites. I know, every time I share that story, it gives me shivers, talking about biological changes that happen. I mean, I really feel the shivers, because I feel like this guy gave me a lesson that I couldn't have learned from any books I have read. He made me realize that there is a level of basic need and biological response and frustration, aggression that will lead people to behave in ways that don't make sense to most of us. We have an expected response as people are satisfied to some level. If those guys were waking up in the morning, have something in their stomach, probably I can understand that the model of Oxfam would have worked. They still could have held themselves until they got to the market and sold everything, and then they can have a big lunch. But those guys were desperate below that level, way below that level. And when this guy looked me in my eyes, and as old as he is, and the way he's shaped and everything, and he said, hunger bites, what this told me is, in other words, I think what he didn't say was, what do you know about hunger? What do you know about people, loved ones died because of hunger in front of you? What do you know about not going with food or anything to drink for 2 or 3 weeks? What do you know about getting sick and have diseases because you never had good nutrition? So who are you to judge us about how we behaved at that moment when we felt desperate and that was the only thing we can do that made sense to us? Of course, we wrote that story in the evaluation report, and it was important because, and that's how we can see the connection of some of those theories to what you do in the reality. In our recommendations in our report was, you got to assess carefully the level of basic need of people, and to understand that the way they will respond is going to be dependent on the level of frustration that they have because of what happened. And don't assume that your understanding of how people should behave and respond is going to always conform to your understanding of reality coming from a comfortable lifestyle. Instead, you need to make an extra effort to understand where people are. For me, that's where some of the theories can help us, and you can see how they translate to real practical implication to how we do our work on the ground. Did Oxfam do what?
Help them some more.
Some more, I'm sure they did, because actually my Rwandese friends and who know about the situation, even like about 5-6 years ago, I did share the same story at UPeace here, and some of the Rwandans said that definitely the situation of Batwa is improving a lot. The government is finally taking notice, and they are trying to give them some space to grow a little bit. Yes. So in terms of that, again, there is this one set of psychological theories that, as you can see, it almost like it starts from the biological to the more of the response that almost closer to animal trying to just to protect themselves. And then the psychoanalytical one that takes us into more of like, well, let's go deeper to the early time of your life and see how certain concepts of good and bad are shaped based on the response you get to satisfy your basic needs as a baby. And psychoanalysis goes way deep into this, but then the relation to peace and conflict is that those same responses that are based on who gave you satisfaction when you are a baby versus not is translated to how you form groups and how you shape your relationship vis-a-vis groups. And eventually you start to put the world in black and white almost, that whoever I like around me, those are the ones that are good people, but those who I don't like, I start to throw every negative feeling I had when I was a very early child into them. So I started the process of demonization and dehumanization of other groups, which serves an important purpose, which is to the extent that I dehumanize and demonize somebody else, then when I'm in conflict with them and I smack them or kill them or bomb them or blow up myself at them, I am convinced that I'm doing the right thing. It serves a strong, actually, and that was in the writing that I gave you from Rupin and Pruitt, and also Chris Mitchell, that the idea of demonizing the enemy and making them look like a terrible entity versus I am the good guy serves the purpose of inflicting harm and punishing them in ways that otherwise you wouldn't do. But you can do it now because you convinced yourself that you're doing the right thing against an evil person. In other words, you are protecting the world from a bad guy. So destroying them to the Stone Age is better for the whole humanity and for us and for everybody else. That rationale and logic is needed for us to justify violence and aggression in times of conflict. And of course, we don't call it as such. We call it self-defense. We call it that we protected our interest from the evil ones, and so on. The good news with social learning theory is it is saying, no, everything up here can be unlearned. And we can introduce something different to human beings that they can do things, so that they can do things in a different way that is more peaceful, that is more appropriate. And this is a foundation for everything we do. From this, we move to the mid-range one. The mid-range theories, as I mentioned, they are more on the contextual and relationship level. They definitely have a nice combination of some of the psychological dimensions to what happens inside people with the macro level. But they focus on a specific area, as I mentioned. Is any of you doing the theory of anomie? Who's doing it? I really would love to see. Okay, which seminar are you in? Who's the leader of your seminar? Maria Teresa. Okay. I have talking about soft spots to certain theories. So this is really the one I have soft spot for. And are you the only one doing anomie? Anyone else doing anomie? You see, I'm not surprised. Somehow anomie doesn't have that kind of fame in the. You don't even know what it means, right? maybe that's the problem. The word is complex. As a matter of fact, the first one to come with the word anomie was Émile Durkheim. Durkheim, a French sociologist, and he actually was studying why people commit suicide. And so in his analysis, he concluded that before people reach the point of committing suicide, they have to reach this state of anomie. Anomie, that it means like you getting frustrated with the system around you, feeling bad about yourself to a point that it just, he actually was more interested why Catholics commit suicide, given the belief and faith in life after and punishment that you may get if you commit suicide, and still they commit suicide. And he concluded that it's a state of anomie, being anomic, being not, it's totally dissatisfied with the context around you. I'll explain a little bit more. And feeling that you have no ability to have any response other than to just retreat completely and get out of this world. And that's what Merton later came on to develop. So it is those three theories, in my opinion, they try to help us understand a certain level of what happens in societies. Relative deprivation, I bet you several are doing it. How many people are doing relative deprivation? Oh, look at that. Okay, good. Relative deprivation is very popular in the field of peace and conflict studies. Very. Anomie is hardly known, but I learned it because I studied sociology first as I was studying peace and conflict, and I thought, whoa, what a great theory. Somehow, many people don't know how to use it to explain, but I believe that it really, I'm glad that you seem to agree, that it does help us to understand a lot of things. The two theories are similar in a way. Both of them are looking at the relative deprivation is more interested why, as the name of the book says, why men rebel. Of course, men here is meant as to refer to men and women. But the idea is, the focus is why certain groups of people will revolt or will start to rise against a regime, against the society, against the government, like we saw in the Arab Spring or in other situations in the world, or Armenia lately, and what conditions exist that will likely make people rebel or revolt. So that is the focus, a certain phenomenon of rebellion against the system, and that's what the theory is trying to understand. The relative deprivation theory assumes that there are two, in any society, especially in certain conditions, there is a rise in expectations, and that's what they call it value expectations, am I right? Value expectations, and versus value capabilities. The value expectations are the expectations that you get at a certain time in a society that now things are good, like after a victory in a war, or after a new change in government, and the feeling is now things will, or discovery of oil, or something that people feel that, whoa, we're going to have a happy life now. So the expectations are going up. Capabilities becomes what you can actually achieve as a member of that group. Can you really rise up with it? Is your condition going to go up with those expectations or match with it? Or are they going to stay down or not enough? And the theory in general, of course, is much more complex than this, and that's what I hope you guys will present on, is that to the extent that that level of capabilities is not matching or not satisfying enough with the rise, the risen expectations, frustration, back to the psychological, happens. Groups start to complain and feel that something is not right, and that's when they feel that they need to do something as a reaction to this situation, and that can take the form of a revolution, violence, and so on. And this is the main, I would say, thesis in that theory. Anomie, very similar, doesn't take exactly the concept of rising expectations. It is more static. It argues that in any society in the world, there are what we call cultural goals. Any society has goals, definitely. When you think, and the example they use is, say in the US society in general and culture, there is this aspiration that you need to make money, you need to live well financially, and so on. So people are striving to try to achieve that goal of having a good lifestyle, the American dream, a good house and car, and so on. So, and that's legitimate. There's nothing wrong with that. So with that culture goal, any society has what we call institutional norms or institutional structures that are intended to help people to achieve the cultural goal. So if I am in a society that is day and night telling me that a good person, a good American is the one who's achieving a certain level of lifestyle or whatever it is, then I am trying to see what can I do, what are institutional processes available for me to achieve this. Education, opening a business, whatever it is that will help me to reach that goal. According to Merton in his theory of anomie, he says that there are 5 possibilities. If things are not working well, or there is the deviation between the cultural goals and the institutional, I have my cheat sheets. Between the institutional means, yeah, what's wrong? I mean, come on, it's legitimate, right? Yeah, it's not a closed book exam, is it? He argues that there are 5 different adaptations that may exist based on where you are in the society. If you are somebody who is happy with the cultural goals, and the society is affording you the means, the institutional means to achieve them, then you are happy, right? And that's what he calls a conformity. Somebody is achieving the goal and it's going well for them, then you have a plus on the cultural goal and the plus on the institutional means. In other words, you're fine. I mean, the society is kind of encouraging you to be rich and to have money and blah, and you can go to school and be a lawyer and make $300,000 a year, and so everything is matching. Your process is matching to achieve your goal. But that's kind of like when you think people will be happy. But the challenge is when you start to see that things are not matching between those two. So for example, if your culture goals are still, yes, you really like them, you really want to aspire for them, but you don't have the means to achieve them. But you still believe in them and you want to achieve them. And that's where he suggests that's when you can have innovation. People are trying to find, like, wait a minute, I'm not able to do it by going to school. So let me try by developing something different, or to explore my art things. Like I saw yesterday on Facebook, somebody put a picture of a little boy in Cairo sitting at the entrance of a metro station. And what he's doing is, he's like 11 years old. And he sits and he's very good in drawing pictures of people. So he's offering that service to people as they are going to the metro in and out. And he can quickly draw your picture for in 10, 15 minutes. And he has some samples of the pictures he drew. And the story goes that this boy, his parents got divorced. He and his sister live with a grandmother who is very sick and unable to take care of them. He wants to take care of them, and he wants to have money for his sister to get married. So for him, of course, I mean, going to school and that whole system that is set for him, the institutional means, good luck until he finishes all this and hopefully achieves the point of having some money. So he had to be innovative. So he decided, where can I sit and use a talent I have so that I can make the money that will help me to continue to achieve the culture goal of supporting my sister and my grandmother. So that's an innovation. The book interestingly talks about innovation can be in terms of doing illegal things too. I mean, you cannot do it through, and I think somebody's talking about doing research or the paper on the cartels in Mexico. I can't remember who told me about this. That might be a good explanation of the cartel and drug trafficking as a means of trying to get rich, even when you are not using the proper, the standard norms. A third approach to this is say that you are actually, don't buy into the culture goals, but you are very stuck on the methods of doing it. And that's where ritualism becomes the practice that you do. You just do things because that's how we do it. That's how we do things. I wake up in the morning, I take the bus, I go to work, I go home, I sleep, and the cycle continues. Are you aware what this is supposed to lead you to? No, you kind of lost sight or lost interest in why. You're just living day by day. Many people actually end up having their life becomes a part of ritual like this. Another one is that and when you lose interest in both, imagine when you no longer believe in the culture goals of society, neither the means. And that's when you retreat. You just say the heck with you. And actually we had that in Egypt when we started to have the process of violent extremism and radicalization in the early 70s in Egypt. One group that lost total connection with the culture goals of the modern society of Egypt and everything that they try to achieve, education and other forms, because they believe that this is totally separate or far away from religion and Islam as they understand it. So they actually, as their first reaction was not violence, which would be number 5 actually, or the 5th one, but no, their reaction was what? Said, leave the society totally, go live in the desert, and let us set our own goals and our own ways of doing things, retreating fully. And that was actually even the name that was given to that organization was that they consider the society un-Islamic, infidel, and they migrate out. So they totally lost connection with the two levels. Yes?
So is that how subcultures?
Yeah, definitely. When you think of some of the cults that exist in all over, and the US has a bunch of them, and in many places in the world, they are, this is a good example. They just don't want to connect with that society anymore, and they develop their own culture goals and their own ways of achieving it. Retreat. They retreat from the society completely.
Even on the level of like,
Yeah, that was, although the hippies, some of them, I think they wanted to change things. They lost connection, yeah. But some were revolting. Which goes to the 5th model of this, where you feel like, yeah, I don't like what you're doing, I don't like how you go about it, but I'm going to change things too, while being here. And that is the model of revolting. So as you can see, between those two theories, relative deprivation and anomie, I think there is a lot you can discover if you are focused on the issue of why people start to get frustrated with their society and want to do something about it. The third one, identity formation. Of course, as you saw in the model of CRC Papio, said identity is in the heart of sources of conflict. Yes, because of your identity, be it religious, ethnic, any type of identity, it's in the heart of people, who they are, and it shapes how I understand the world. When this is frustrated, like we saw with Bangladesh, we are not going to make Bangla a formal language or official language anymore. Whoa, I mean, people will go out and demonstrate on the street because of this. When people feel why, when you think about actually, even though, I mean, you can have different opinions on it, those from the US know the story of what's happening with the statues of heroes of the Civil War time and before in the South. I mean, you have all those statues of people who were supposedly were fighting on behalf of the South in the Civil War, and they still have their statues. But many people now believe that those guys don't deserve to be there. They were slave drivers, and they don't really belong in our 21st century anymore. And this is causing trouble with people who are so attached to that identity of the South. And a lot of problems are happening in the US because of should we take the statues out or not? And it's such a complex issue. I am not necessarily taking sides on it, but I would say that as a conflict analyst, you need to understand where people who are coming from the South why they are so upset with this, and why they think that this is something threatening their identity, and how they have shaped the world in their understanding. Not necessarily it's okay, but you got to understand where they come from. And maybe that becomes a solution. If I understand how this is attached to their identity and their sense of who they are, the way they were trained or educated about history, then maybe I can have a way to undo it. Not to say, oh, okay, then you're fine, then let's keep, I'm not saying that. I am saying I cannot change things like this if I don't understand where the person comes from. Understanding a theory of identity, understanding how it works, how it forms group sense of belonging. What does it serve to individuals? After all, identity is not just intended for the sake of having an identity, but it should serve purposes. It should serve your basic needs. And if it doesn't, then something is wrong with that identity. And that's where people may revolt against an identity if it's not satisfying their needs. But the assumption is the identity is giving you security, giving you the safety, giving you the aspiration to what a good person will be. And within that, you want to belong to that identity and develop something positive with it, and also develop something negative about others who are threatening you. Identity becomes the key element for forming different conflicts and forming how we behave against others and so on. And then the third set is the one that tries to explain the whole universe pretty much. I have here basic human needs. I mean, it's in the heart of things that if I understand basic human needs, I can understand where people are and why they behave the way they behave. And I'm sure several of you will do a presentation on basic human needs. Basic, okay, good. And it will keep coming back and popping back in your own programs wherever you go. Once you enter the field of peace and conflict, you are not going to run away from basic human needs. It's going to be after you always. Irma?
I wonder why you don't put the basic human needs in the mainstream as well. Because it influences all the levels, doesn't it?
Okay, as I told you, if you want to do it this way, do it that way. I mean, it is just a perspective. My perspective on it was more that it fits with the macro. But as I mentioned with feminism and environment, I'm not stuck on how. I mean, a couple of them maybe I'll say, no, for sure this fits here. But yes, I can see your point. Sometimes I think in my mind that basic human needs should fit with the micro level too. So maybe you're right. It should be a perspective more than a theory in the macro level. Maybe my intention was that it just helped us to understand almost every kind of conflict because it's in the source. Political economy theories. Of course, I would say there's two main streams in political economy theory. There is the liberal thinking, the free market, globalization as we understand it today, that try to set the whole world based on capitalism is really the foundation of understanding things. And if we can handle capitalism and harness capitalism in a way that it is also considerate of the social context, then it is the model that fits well with human nature and that can make people prosper because of creativity and so on and da-da-da-da. And this is definitely one strong theory, and it has all the power now. I mean, this is the one that is being forced on people. This is the one that is the IMF is doing, the World Bank is doing, the US is doing, everybody's doing. And liberalism and free market is the name of the game. And and of course the books that were written by End of History and The Clash of Civilization and so on, they are perfect reflection of the notion of liberalism in political economy. The other side, yes, sir.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure exactly where this fits in, but there's sort of an ideological conflict here too, where the World Bank and the IMF do certain things to countries, but if they try to do a different model, that increases the conflict. Mm-hmm. But that's beyond, you know, what the needs being provided by the economy are. That's actually conflict being caused by the ideology.
Ideology. So, and yes, I agree with you. But yeah, you're right. But maybe that's what I'm also saying is that like the ideology, if what you call it the ideology of free market, liberalism, and so on, is one of the theories. I mean, underlying there is a whole full theory of why capitalism and free market is the right way to do things economically and politically. And that's one, and yes, but then when they go out in the world and do it, they struggle with many challenges that people feel that you are shoving that ideology down our throat when it's not actually helping us. And that's when Marxism comes to offer an answer. Marxism, and by the way, when I say Marxism, I don't mean communism. I don't mean Soviet Union. As a matter of fact, those guys were very bad manifestation of Marxism. They give Marxism bad name. But I think that Marxism as a discipline, as a theory, as a field of study, as a scholarship, is an excellent approach to understanding really humanity and all the movements that happened. And definitely people will say that feminism found its own roots in Marxism and critical theory. It is once you start to deconstruct, and for me that's the heart of feminism, to jump a little bit, that and also in the heart of Marxism is to say, well, why are we sitting the way we are sitting like this in rows? And then you will challenge, well, that is intended to achieve a certain power balance and serving the purpose of the elites versus those who are working hard to survive. It started to challenge a lot of the assumptions that the society and history has been built upon and offered alternative explanations. And the explanations was that the elites, the way they want to survive and maintain their power, they have to have control over the means of production. And in doing this, they have to keep the masses, the proletariat, the working class, under control and have them produce for them. So you have to put the pressure on them to continue to serve you, to continue to work. And that's how they can bring into the notions, of course, the models of slavery and why slavery was important. And then they dare to go as far as to say, well, religion served the same purpose, telling people, oh, don't worry about having a good reward in life. You will have your reward after. But now you just need to be a good person and listen to your boss and listen and do your good job. I mean, so that's how they had a negative view about religion, given that it served the purpose of maintaining the status quo of oppression against the working class. But also Marxism goes on to suggest that there should be a change. So what do we need to do? Dismantle those controls on the means of production and let people own those means of production, change the whole society and how it is shaped, power to women and others and so on. And that's where the Soviet Union, communism came and tried to adopt this notion and develop societies around that concept. But obviously we have seen that things did not go exactly well. And that's a whole other story. But Marxism itself as an ideology, as you say, or as a theory to explain conflicts, especially on the macro level and historically, is excellent as a theory. Not I'm saying it's the right one, I'm not saying that, but it's a very good way of explaining dynamics and how they happen. I argue world religions is another form of theory that is macro, that is trying to explain to us not only our life on earth, but even supposedly our life hereafter. And do we want to still dismiss religion and say, oh, this is from the past, and take a strong secular fundamentalist attitude about it and refuse to bring religion in the picture? I would say it'd be wrong to do that. And I think the Iranian Revolution of 1978-79 was the first to shock the world. I remember at that time when we were in the late 70s, everybody thinking communism, capitalism, Soviet Union, United States. And that was the end of the game. So you choose to be in that camp or this camp. Religion was something in the past. You do on Friday prayer or Sunday church or Saturday prayer and so on. But for a revolution to emerge in a country like Iran that was highly westernized, that was part of the US camp, very important for the US and Western camp, and to find that a revolution comes out of there that is not communist, that is not socialist in a state, it is coming in the name of Islam. It was so confusing to people. People did not understand what this was all about. And since then, look at all the movements of violent extremism that we have seen all over the world that have been shaped by Al-Qaeda, by Al-Jihad in Egypt, by ISIS, by Boko Haram, by Shabab, and many, and even inside Europe and in the United States and in other places. This all tells us that we cannot underestimate the role of religion. We cannot just keep dismissing it as an effective tool of analysis. No, we need, just like I said, Marxism is important for us to understand where people are or identity and so on. I also need to know how are those religious theories and ideologies developed? How do they shape people's mind and heart? To the point that it convinces them that the right thing at certain time to do is to blow up yourself and kill other people. We got to understand them, understand what is the worldview that's coming with religion, and four different forms of religion, and how can this help us as part of this bigger equation. And then, for the feminist perspectives, As I mentioned, that it was born in the cradle of Marxism and critical theory, challenges to society as we know it, to history as we know it, except it took the focus on women and what happened to women and deconstructed the institutions and practices that have persisted to relegate women, to oppress them, to abuse them, to make them in the service of man, gives them no voice. And through this started to develop alternatives. How can we change things? If you look at actually the CRC Papi and he's telling me where feminists can best serve things, I would say in the point of power. Power, because it is all about power. It is about men and patriarchy from early on always imposed on women certain expectations, certain practices that were intended to serve the man and his interests and needs. And it is only lately that we started to see women rising and women starting to stand up for themselves. Of course, there are different schools of thought within feminism and different approaches, but ultimately my great respect for feminism is its ability to deconstruct power structures, its ability to make it reveal to us the injustice in treating other groups, whether because of gender or because of religion. And that's where you can actually, for me, feminism inspired me to understand other forms of oppression and other forms of disempowering groups. Because the same logic that has been used against women for generations is the same that has been used also in other places. So the methods that they used, that they developed for deconstruction. For example, one of my favorite methods of research that I use in my work is critical discourse theory. And any of you who would like to do something about deconstructing discourses that are oppressive, abusive, unjust, please read in the critical discourse theory, and it will give you good tools for how you can do research to understand where the discourse is used to maintain a power, to institutionalize oppression, and what can we do to undo this. So for me, feminism doesn't end with women. It starts with women. And then you can take it and apply it to all different levels of oppression. And then finally, environmental perspectives. This is something that emerged lately, but started to really gain our attention. That's why UPeace is so strong about it. 2, 3, 4 programs we have are addressing natural resources, environment from different dimensions, and water. And that's because we realize now that it's not only about the scarce resource of water or food, but it's also about the environmental change that are happening around us and how this is shaping our behavior, shaping how we do things in conflict. Egypt, for example, is getting into a very serious conflict with Ethiopia because Ethiopia is building this huge dam and that will generate a lot of electricity for them, but it may affect the supply of water going to Egypt. Can you imagine how scared Egyptians are? And so on. And of course, in climate change, maybe Trump doesn't believe in it, but many people are seeing the signs that this is serious, this is affecting us. And it will have a direct effect not only on the resources we have, but even on the attitudes that people will have and how they will deal with each other. So definitely, if you want to have a holistic story of what's happening in conflict, you cannot dismiss now the notion of environmental perspectives as well. That's it. And I would like to see if you have any comments or questions for next 5 minutes. Yeah.
Where in all of this could we fit the theory of postmodernism?
Okay, excellent. Postmodernism. Yeah, wow, that's very good. Okay. Postmodernism definitely is something that emerged, perhaps I would say definitely has roots in feminism. It also has roots in response to the dominant political economy theory of capitalism. And also, where did I don't have culture theory. Did they skip culture theories? Yeah. So, yeah. What do you say?
I think critical discourse theory or critical theory and postmodernism are very similar.
Yeah, but definitely it's trying to look at societies beyond what the initial theories of liberalism were trying to set us that this is how it looks like, capitalism, free market, and they say that, well, societies have moved beyond that. There is a new level to this, and we don't need to get always stuck in the debate of capitalism versus other models, but there is something beyond it now in modern societies. And I think feminism for me is a good example of where we deal with postmodernism. Good point. But yes, it should be added. I promise to add it in the 2019 version.
Do you see decolonization theory as its own set of theories, like Frantz Fanon and that kind of stuff? Is that something you've thought about in terms of conflict and peace?
Yeah, so, I mean, it fits, as we mentioned, in the political economy under the more of the capitalists, but they are the kind of ultra-right of that.
Well, I'm talking like Frantz Fanon is like ultra-left revolutionary. Have you ever heard of him?
No, I thought you were talking about that guy that worked with Trump. What's his name?
Oh, no. I'm talking, like, yeah, decolonization. It's like,
Oh, decolonization. I'm sorry. I heard you wrong.
all right.
Okay, you want to say something about
Oh, I was just asking if that's if you include that as its own type of theory, or if that's mostly folded into political economy.
No, but I think you're right that between postmodernism and decolonization theories, yes, they should be part of this. Maybe I'll have to admit here that when I used to do this a few years ago here, I had my colleague Victoria Fontaine working with me, Dr. Victoria Fontaine, and she was the one who was the expert on postmodernism and decolonization. So she filled that gap. So now I need to remember that, wait a minute, I need to now fill up this gap, or have one of my colleagues fill up that gap about postmodernism and the decolonization. Decolonization was her main topic for 2 sessions. Yeah, good. I'm glad you reminded me of that.
Those are both big branches of critical theory.
Absolutely. Okay. Okay, but can I take others for now? Okay.
I wanted to add in regards to like the feminism branch, upcoming feminism topics that are coming up, especially from like the Women's March and the Pussy Hat movement, concepts of intersectional feminism and the fact that not everyone is included biologically as well as in regards to political debates, but even in relation to the environmental one, also ecofeminism, which is becoming a huge topic.
What I like to suggest is this, just to give you an introduction, an incomplete introduction to some of the theories that exist in the field and how they may help us to understand different dimensions of conflict and peace. Your job for the whole year is to inject some of this new knowledge and the new learned approaches, and to not only rely on the classroom. One of the good things with UPeace does is you have like brown bags, you have other forms of sharing and talking with other classmates and faculty about some of those concepts. I encourage you, what you mentioned is very important, and I hope that you will be one of the people to set up some type of a brown bag to explain how this relates. Are you in the gender program?
No, I'm not. International law and the settlement.
Okay, so now it'd be fantastic to combine what you mentioned with international law and see how this can work. Great. Okay, I want to be cognizant of time, so but go ahead, absolutely.
Thank you. So in field of conflict resolution, in particular mediation field, I heard that constructivism is very important factor. Some scholars that suggest that narrative mediation, that maybe mediation is composed by constructivism. So I'm wondering that we can add the constructivism in this theory for analysis.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. But I think maybe I see constructivism as more of kind of like almost the analytical tools that can run through many of these, but not necessarily just a theory by itself. But I agree that yes, narrative mediation is based on this notion of constructivism. Yeah. But so again, like there are certain tools that I see them more, not the theory itself, but you got to use them as you're building a theory. Excellent. Okay.
I'm going to read out an extract from one of the readings that we got recently. I'm not sure what it means. It says, as a matter of fact, the recent history of the US shows that several conflicts that involved the suppression of the rights of different minority groups were productive and did help in the transformation.
Productive, you say?
Productive. And did help in the transformation of the entire society. And this is mainly because they were handled within the adversarial legal system. That's quite a strong statement. I mean, I don't know what
it's quite, and it's quite strong, and I would say I would strongly disagree with it. I mean, obviously, this is written more from just because you know what about the enemy? We spoke about one model which was ritualism, and I think the last sentence is about ritualism. As long as you stuck with the adversarial legal system, then things should be good. I mean, and I think that is an argument turned upside down. I mean, no, here there are deeper issues of minorities, their rights, and so on. And if you think, I guess the point they want to make is that many of those minority groups went through the court system and achieved what they wanted. But actually, I have a problem with that because I think many of the problems are bigger than legal. And they need to be dealt with on the social context, on the cultural context, the contextual factors. But to limit it to let's deal with it in the court system and have the court system decide that yes, this minority group should earn something or not earn something else is a very limited. But yes, they gained some success. When you think of some of the Supreme Court rulings that came in favor of, for example, the desegregation of schools and stuff like that, maybe that's what they are referring to. But my opinion is it's a limited approach. Okay. Yep.
Hi. It's very important to address the basic human needs. I mean, it is the first, but moving on that, how do you influence or enable communities to really to think critically about the inequalities that put them in that situation? How do you move from that?
Maybe I'll go back to the example I mentioned about the Batwas in Rwanda. If I understood the basic needs of those people and where they are so stuck in at a level behind or below what I even expect humans to supposedly to be around, and my entire intervention theory, my humanitarian support is based on an assumption about where people are in terms of their basic need, especially for hunger and shelter, and I develop the programs accordingly, then I find that those programs are not actually satisfying those people. Then here, basic human needs theory and understanding how to assess basic needs, assess how they are frustrated, to what level, and how they should be satisfied, could help an organization to develop its own programs. And that's how it becomes a practical exercise. I hope that you don't think of the theories only on the intellectual level and for writing your thesis. Yes, that's one level. But I think what's more important is when you go in the field, how will basic human needs theory help you when you deal with people and they talk about their frustrations and so on, that indeed they are talking about basic needs that are frustrated. And if you know very well that if basic needs are frustrated, people will never settle and probably will try to do whatever they can to achieve them, then you need to see what you can do to alert whoever is in charge that they cannot continue to leave the situation going, otherwise it will blow up in their face. Relative deprivation will start to play a role, enemy will play a role, and but in the heart of it is the basic needs. Many of your questions are fantastic, and but they will take us the entire year to keep answering, and that's why you're here. This one session is not intended to answer all those big complex questions, but I hope that you take those questions and that's what you debate and discuss throughout the year. And I am sure, and as I mentioned to you, don't expect that you'll always come out with an answer. Actually, I think we are more successful when we make you come out with more questions, not with more answers. And you try to find the answers for them when you go out in the field and you do your work. We stop here? Thank you so much. Have a great day. And I'll come and see you in your sessions.